I know we have Mr. Bradley. Ms. Lou, are you on? All right, so we'll get it started. This is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. The Board of Education is meeting electronically due to the gathering size restrictions as delineated in MCL 33.3.2253. The public may participate in the meeting by joining the Zoom link listed above. Board members may be contacted through emails listed below. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Upon prior request to the superintendent, the district shall make reasonable accommodation for a person with disabilities to be able to participate in the meeting. Special requests for special assistance may be sent to liz.goodwin@bhas.org. This meeting is called to order at 5:32 p.m. At this time, we'll state the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
President Taylor?
Yes.
Vice President Crowder?
Yes.
Secretary Robinson is present. Treasurer Buchanan? Trustee Watley Seats? Trustee Bradley?
Present. I am present, Ms. Robinson, sorry.
I got you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Trustee Bradley, I heard you as well. Trustee Watson?
Present.
All right, we have a quorum. At this time, I will ask for a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by
Support.
Vice President Crowder, supported by Trustee Bradley. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding tonight's agenda? Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
President Taylor?
Yes.
Vice President Crowder?
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Trustee Watley Seats?
Yes.
Trustee Bradley?
Yes.
Trustee Watson?
Yes.
Item C, approval of the agenda has passed. At this time, we have public.
I
Yes.
just got word that Trustee Buchanan is trying really hard to log on.
Okay.
That just came through my office just now, just an FYI.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
And so we'll keep going with the agenda and hopefully she'll be able to connect. At this time, we have public comment on agenda items only. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on agenda items only, you have 3 minutes. Anyone online for public comment for agenda items only? All right. At this time, I'll ask for a motion for the approval of the minutes from November 10th, a regular board meeting, and also December 1st, a special board meeting, and December 1st, a special board meeting closed session, December 7th, a special board meeting, and December 7th, a special board meeting closed session. May I have a motion for the approval of the aforementioned meeting minutes?
So moved.
So moved. Oh,
Moved by Mr. Watson, who supported?
I support it.
All right, and supported by Vice President Crowder. Any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections to the special meeting minutes, closed meeting minutes, as well as regular session minutes? Madam Secretary, call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, are you on the line yet? Okay. Trustee Watley Thees, Trustee Watley Thees, can you unmute for me, please?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Okay. Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Under board business, I think we have Mr. Bradley. He's gonna take us through his MASB training. And Secretary Robinson, if you would like to speak about your training as well, please do so. Mr. Bradley, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I wasn't expecting that, but all right. I'm going to try to be brief as possible. I attended 4 CBA classes this weekend, so I will not. I would not be upset with the parents now. After being on Zoom classes all week here. I had the opportunity to attend 4 of them per policy reference 175.1. They were very, very informative classes. I did CBA 106, community relations, leadership. I did the Open Meetings Act, the strategic planning and goal setting, which is CBA 251 and CBA 380, effective committee structure. I'm going to try to cover a few highlights from each course, and hopefully we can apply some to our board in the near and ongoing future. With CBA 106, that's community relations leadership. We discussed the importance of having relationships with the community and finding ways to connect with the community. So key points I picked up was making opinions about facts and data and not the public, not public opinion. School boards must have the public trust. Open decision-making and community involvement, clarity and clear in what direction we are going as a board, having a mastery of the demographics of the district and utilizing the resources to find that data, creating accountability at the board level when the board is clear, focused, and accountable, community buy-in, and generational diversity. CBA 214 was the Open Meetings Act, and that was led by Brad, the legal guru at MASB. And we discussed, some of the changes in the Open Meetings Act, how to do the parliamentary procedure, some of the legal ramifications of the Open Meetings Act, and some of the very changing things of the Open Meetings Act. CBA 251 dealt with strategic planning, and a lot of districts had to put that on hold because of COVID-19. So hopefully we can start laying that foundation and getting some things in place for our board when the new members and the current members that are staying over come on, so we can start doing that. And I look forward to working with the members and Dr. Townsend on that. And some highlights from that was making sure we're being transparent in that process. Finding different ways to communicate the strategic plan. And they also gave some awesome examples from different districts around the state, whether it was social media, whether they had, charts, how they were engaging with the public, aligning goals and school improvement plans and having quarterly reports on goal settings. Even one district was interacting with one member from on the other side of the state, and she also was saying that they have their strategic plan lined up with their agenda, so their agenda doesn't stray off topic, but stays on topic with those goals. And then I want to go back up to CBA 106 because I just remembered something. They were talking about making students go first if they had feedback on the agenda at the board meetings, just in case they have to go home and do homework. So I just remembered that. I was trying to remember it earlier when I was doing my summary. The other thing with 251 was communicating early and often, especially in the planning process, keeping people engaged and local media informed. Then also utilizing SMART, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based, and other methods in your strategic planning. CBA 380 dealt with effective committee structure and how that helps the boards function. And I think, in my personal opinion, this is one of our strongest areas as a board because it helps us to hold efficient meetings. And then those committee meetings, we're discussing how we can better serve our students in our district. It also discussed, that class also discussed different types of committees and whether we, whether you could do a standing committee or a committee as a whole. Some key points, they talked about the board operating at a 50,000 foot level and being strategic, the school board being strategic, and the different levels of visibility. Governing is steering, not rowing. There are 4 streams of board governing: the board's direction and management of its own operations as a governing body, strategic and operational planning, monitoring financial and education performance, and external relations, linking goals to the committees. That instructor for that class was Deb Macon. And she also gave some helpful resources that we could utilize: the School Board Handbook by Doug Eady, and Boards That Make a Difference, Basic Principles of Policy and Governance and Reinventing Your Board by John Carver. And those are 2 models that you can use for your board. The Governance Core is also another one. And I looked on Amazon, there's a lot, but for that School Board Handbook, she said to make sure, if you just wanted to take a preview of it, check out chapter 7 of that book. And they have a few chapters on, as a preview on Amazon. I was trying to find it on Amazon. If you need access to the slides, I do have that. I can forward the emails to you. One of the board members was from the Bloomfield Hills area. He said that Doug Eady will be at their board meeting on Friday from 1 to 4. So if you want that link, just let me know if anyone's interested in that. So I do thank the district for the opportunity to let us as board members take part in professional development. And it was very, like I said, very informational. The other instructor for the strategic planning was Debbie Stair, and she has a depth of knowledge too of a lot of board topics. So, like I said, once again, thank you for this time, and that's it for that.
All right, thank you, sir, man. You're a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you for all you do.
You're welcome.
Secretary Robinson, did you want to give any feedback or?
Well, no, President Taylor, I don't know why you chose to allow me to go after Professor Bradley with his dissertation he provided tonight. I cannot top that, and I was not prepared to do so. One of the things that stuck out for me from my training that I took was concerning finance and budgeting, and just fully being able to calculate and determine how we receive funding from the state, where that funding goes, and how important our attendance is in receiving that funding, which I already knew about count days, but just now fully understanding how the dollars are counted and received, and how the millages and things like that impact the funding that we get. So I just want our administrative team to know that I am going to be concentrating on attendance more than ever for that reason. But I do not have the extensive notes that Mr. Bradley had prepared to share with the board and the community today. So I apologize for that. But I also appreciate the opportunity to attend training. I attended a total of 3 over the weekend. And then with the evaluation training that we did last month. So I've just enjoyed learning a little bit more in the last 2 months as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, this is awesome, because you guys, this is what makes great school boards, because when you're informative and you know the how, the what's and the whys, then we can create a great school district. So thank you guys for that. Dr. Townsend, we'll turn it over to you for staff report number S1, Neola New Remote Work Policy 8450.
Thank you, President Taylor. So I'll give a brief overview of this new remote work policy. You can just pull up the staff report, Ms. Gail, but I'll give an overview so people can understand where we're coming from. This is titled the Special Update from our November 2020 MIOSHA Emergency Order. So MIOSHA is the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This update is being issued in response to the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration release of emergency rules regarding coronavirus disease 2019. The rule requires that all Michigan employers shall create a policy prohibiting in-person work for employees to the extent that their work activities can feasibly be completed remotely. Pardon? So everyone need to mute. We need everyone to mute. Specific details of such an assignment are covered by current policies that deal with such issues as health, safety, technology use, security, confidentiality, and expense reimbursement. Such details should be included in the district extended learning plan. The policy is 8450.05, which is emergency temporary telecommuting policy. The document has been posted on our board docs, and the resolution is as follows. Let me pull that up here. So the reason for board approval is highly recommended by Neola that we include a policy to reflect this temporary change regarding remote work. The facts and analysis are in response to MIOSHA's emergency order of November 2020, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve this new policy since the rule requires that all Michigan employers shall create a policy prohibiting in-person work for employees to the extent that their work activities can feasibly be completed remotely. The recommended action is that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education vote to adopt policy number 8450.05. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion for the approval of S1 staff report?
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Crowder. May I have a second?
Support.
Supported by Trustee Bradley. Any questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote for staff report S1? Madam Secretary?
I'm sorry, I was trying to allow my husband to stop speaking. So the only question I have is just wondering, do we have anyone in our district right now that this policy change impacts?
As of right now, we're all of our campuses are remote, and it's an opportunity to allow our educators to work remotely as well too. The only building that we allowed to be open during this pandemic is the high school for emergency in-person situations. What we're asking for our employees to do is to provide a reason why they shall come to campus during this emergency right now. So it just puts a policy in place that allows people to let us know why they need to be in the building, and we allow that access so we can support our students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff report S1? Madam Secretary, call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, are you on the line?
I was informed she is. They have connected her, so I don't know.
Is
Why
she
we-
muted?
I don't know.
She's muted. Looks like she's muted. Or the phone hung up. Looks like it hung up.
All right, Trustee Watley Seats,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
Staff report S1 passes. Staff report S2 contract extension. Dr. Townsend. So Mr. Corson is informing me that Trustee Buchanan is present. She just needs to unmute herself. But Dr. Townsend, are you online as well for staff report S2?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right.
Staff report number 2 is our contract extensions. So I have 2 members of my executive team, our Chief Finance Officer and Chief Human Resource Officer, whose contract, once we get into January, they would only have 1 year remaining on their contract. And my contract expired in 2024. Theirs would be expiring in 2022. My recommendation is that we can extend both the CFO and the Chief Human Resource Officer's contract for 1 year. And that's to have some continuity of leadership. I do know in my experiences as an administrator, people want a little bit of security on their contracts. And with our Community Engagement Advisory Committee recommendations, the plans that we put in place to move the district forward with regards to our finances and human resources. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important that you have a team that can move together. For example, the hard work that we put in our offices to ensure not only that we are departmentalized, but that we're getting a return on our investment. We started the year off fully staffed, 100% every position completely staffed. You will see later today how we've reduced our fund balance by $2.5 million. I mean, our team in a lot of cases, I probably say 9 times out of 10, are not only working well over 40 hours a week, probably 80 hours a week, and that's including Saturdays and Sundays. I'm asking that we can approve to extend their contract term by 1 year, which takes them to 2023 as opposed to 2022. So the recommendation I'm submitting for board consideration is to accept the contract extensions for Mr. Scott Johnson, our Chief Finance Officer, and Ms. Elizabeth Gale, our Chief Human Resources Officer. It's recommended that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education vote to accept the contract extensions of the aforementioned staff members. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend. May I have a motion for the approval of staff report S2?
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Crowder. May I have a support?
Support.
Supported by Trustee Watley Seats. Any comments, questions, or concerns before we call the vote for staff report S2?
Dr. Townsend, I would assume being that you are asking for extensions, you're highly satisfied with both of their performance?
I am, and you'll see why I'm extremely satisfied with our CFO, and you'll see our business and finance audit presentation later in today after I speak. And HR is one of the hardest positions to come across, especially when we talk about the executive level. And if we can maintain, that department was instrumental in ensuring that 50% of our educators receive 10% back of their salary, as well as ensuring that we receive the step salary increase, and we have a plan in place to move that forward. I'm afraid that if there's a break in leadership, even at my seat, that a lot of the initiatives that we have already developed with the input of our community can be hindered and can set us back. I want to continue to move forward. If I'm going to be here, I want to ensure that I have some teammates that can work with me to meet the needs of our community.
Any other questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote for staff report S2? Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Trustee Buchanan or Treasurer Buchanan? Okay. Trustee Watley Seats,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
Staff report S2 2 passes. Staff report S3, concentric solutions update. Dr. Townsend? Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry, computers.
Yep, computer purchase, no problem. We're going to pull up the staff report. So let me give you guys a little backdrop. So as you know, we've had funds to support our students with getting laptops so they can take them home. Across the country, Google Chromebooks have been on back order. We're still waiting on a bulk of computers to come in. Our team worked extremely hard to identify Firefly computers, and we are using no general fund at all to purchase 450 computers that are ready and available to support our students. We ordered these computers, as you know, back in April, and we still haven't received hundreds of them. But we did identify another vendor who can get us these computers in our hands so we can get them to some of our most neediest students, because what we had to do was use old and outdated computers in some cases that need to be serviced a lot of times. So having these fresh computers that we approved previously, we think that will support our academic achievement with our students that are home. So reason for board approval is that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused students across the country to move to remote learning and has affected the supply for computers for student use. Although the district has computers on back orders, this purchase would make computers available right away while the need is high. This purchase is paid for by the coronavirus relief funds, and no general funds are being used towards this expense. The facts and analysis are that Firefly computers have 450 computers ready and available for purchase right now by Benton Harbor area schools. The school board must approve this purchase. The recommended action is that the Benton Harbor Area School Board of Education vote to approve the purchase of 450 computers for K-12 students. The total purchase price is $128,583. I want to also add, don't forget, we had in-person learning going on, and ever since after Thanksgiving, we went 100% virtual. So we have hundreds of more students that are home where these computers will benefit immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so may I have, I'm trying to figure out for this one, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about something else. Was there a motion? So I need a motion for the approval of staff report number 3.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Watson. May I have support?
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Supported by Trustee Bradley. Any questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote for staff report S3?
And when are these Chromebooks to be delivered?
If we purchase them, we'll get them. I don't have our grants manager here to tell us the exact shipment time, but it shouldn't be over 2 weeks because they have them in stock. So I will hope that we can put a rush on those orders so we can have them before the holiday.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, comments, concerns regarding staff report S3 before we call the vote? Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
yes,
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Watley Seats,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson,
Yes.
It's 6 o'clock.
Secretary Robinson,
yes, sir.
did you finish the roll call? Because something interrupted when you were speaking, so.
Yes, I called Trustee Watson and he answered.
Okay.
It sounded like that was somebody's Siri or something like that.
Okay. So staff report S3 passes. Staff report number F1, Mr. Johnson, the audit presentation.
I have one more thing on here, Mr. President Taylor.
Okay.
Before we go to Mr. Johnson, I had
Okay.
a concentric update. So at our previous Board of Education meeting, we announced that we're working with Concentric Education Solutions. So I just want to give a little bit of information and let you know what we're doing. So obviously when COVID-19 hit, we have people in the district who support with home visits, but as the cases increased, as the awareness kind of heightened, I reached out for support. I did not feel good as a superintendent of our district mandating our employees to go to other people's houses to put them in any type of harm's way. That's when I reached out to our foundation to support the work of Concentric Education Solutions, where professional student advocates were able to go and reach out to our students and their families to get them engaged. We talked about attendance also last board meeting, and talked about the support that was needed. I wanted to share just an update to let individuals know how Concentric Education Solutions has supported us right now, and what we're still doing to support some of our most neediest students when we look at our multi-tiered system of support. So as of the end of November, we've conducted 100 student visits. And out of 100 of those visits, there were hard contacts made, meaning we met right there with that family member at the door. 37 of the 100 were soft contacts, which mean that we left letters with those family members, and 6 of them were no contact. And a little bit of breakdown of the data, out of 32% of the 100, we met specifically with the parent or guardian. 2%, it was vacant property. 8% we met with residents at the incorrect address, so it was a data issue. 37% received letters. 5% of the time there were students that came to the door that we met with specifically. 11% of those individuals were family members, and 4% were no access at all. And we did identify primary reasons for why some of our young people were not engaging with the virtual content. So this information is given back to the schools so we can identify ways to meet the needs of those students. I just wanted to give a small update on where we are with Concentric. And right now we're on the second cohort visiting the next batch of 100 students and following up with those individuals. As a reminder, there is no cost to Benton Harbor area schools for this level of support. And again, I did not want to mandate our Benton Harbor employees to go out to some of our homes, especially during this time. As you can see, we're all meeting virtually because of safety. So I didn't want to put any of our employees in harm's way. However, this company was trained to serve us during this pandemic to keep not only us safe, but our students supported. And that concludes my Concentric update.
Thank you, Dr. Tomzo. Any board members have questions or comments concerning the Concentric Solutions update? Okay. Mr. Johnson, staff report number F1, the audit presentation, Hungerford Nichols.
Thank you. The reason for board consideration: board policy requires that after the close of the fiscal year, an audit of all accounts of the district be made annually by an independent certified public accountant. Facts and analysis: auditors from Hungerford Nichols recently completed the external financial audit of the district's 2019-20 financial records and of federal grant records. This year, the state extended the deadline for completion of public school district audits from the usual November 1 deadline to December 1. Policy reference is 6830 audit, and I'm pleased to welcome 2 presenters, Mr. Michael Gunnert and Mr. Mark Sawyers of Hungerford Nichols, to present the audit report. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Scott. This is Mike Gunnert. Thank you, President Taylor and Dr. Townsell for having us today. I'm going to be going over the financial audit portion, and then there's a single audit portion as well. And it looks like we're looking at the board packet here, which is really good information. I'm going to go over the financial portion of it, and then Mark will speak later on the single audit or the federal compliance portion of the audit. So just for a little background, we did meet with the finance committee earlier, and we went over the audit in greater detail, some of the changes, some of the highlights going on. And so I will try to try to go through some of the high point items as is noted in the board packet that you see on the screen there. So on the very first page, we're looking at the statement in that position, which is a long-term view of the district. It's not just the general fund, it's the general fund, it's the sinking fund, and the non-major funds. It's all the funds, it's everything combined. And a long-term view, capital assets are considered as well. Any long-term debt's considered in there, which is different than the general fund. But just to kind of give you an idea of the statement in that position. And just to show year over year, if we're looking at 2019 compared to 2020, the total net position kind of at the bottom of that table increased from 32.8 million to 28 million as a deficit. Now, yes, that is a deficit, and that is due in large part due to the net pension liability and the net OPEB liability that's noted really right in the middle of that page. We see a net pension liability of 28 million and a net OPEB liability of $6 million. And so that makes up $34 million in liabilities for the district. And so that really is what kind of drags on the school district. Benton Harbor isn't the only one. I would say most, if not all, the school districts that we do have a negative or a deficit net position. But it is good to note on the flip side that we did increase it from 32.8 million to 28 million of a deficit in the current year. And then you can see that's in large part due to you see the current liability. So a lot of the payables, there's also deferred revenue that's in there as well. Last year, that was at a $12.7 million balance. And again, this current liability is kind of in the middle of the screen. 2020, it was 8.5 million. So that was we're looking at a 33% decrease in that liability. Moving on, I just want to note that really as the big item in the net position, but some of the highlights that we wanted to talk about, really that top item, Benton Harbor received, it's an unmodified opinion on the district's audited financial statement, and that is the highest opinion that you can get. That just means that what Scott did in the business office, what they provided, it was good financial information that allowed us as auditors to make a sound opinion on the financial statements. And so I just wanted to note that there. Mark's going to go over that single audit portion on that next highlighted item, but I'm going to kind of keep moving forward here. I'm going to flip over to the statement of activities. So this is really the revenue expense side of it, but again, it's the long-term portion. Here we're looking at, again, it's the $4 million increase, but we just see it on the revenue and expense side. Revenues remain fairly flat, as we can see right there. The item to note here is really going to be the expenses, and that's where the big change came. And we see in our instruction expenses last year we had $11.45 million in expenses, and this past year we had 8.7. Supporting services didn't decrease as much, but it was still a larger decrease from 12.1 to 11.5 million. But overall, we had a $3 million decrease in expenses year over year. So that just kind of shows a good job of managing expenses in a time where we have uncertain revenues, uncertain expenses. So a good job there. Moving forward, just to note on the next page, this is a good little graph that we have really showing the fund balance. Now, unfortunately, this is a 5-year trend of the fund balance deficit. If we're looking in the actual financial audit itself, in the management discussion and analysis, which is kind of the first 20 pages or so of the audit, there's a nice graph that kind of goes back all the way to 2005 that shows the fund balance of the district. And so the fund balance is really keying in on the general fund here. And that shows how it went from positive to negative. And we're still in that negative territory. We're at one point, I believe, a $1.2 million deficit in our fund balance. But Benton Harbor has definitely come a long way. I mean, we can see in 2016 that it was a $12 million deficit, and now we're at $1.2 million deficit. So we're still sitting in that deficit period, as we can see kind of right under that general fund highlights tab at the bottom. Our general fund balance increased by $2.5 million. To us, again, still a deficit, but we're moving in the right direction. And I think that's where we can take that positive information and go forward into the future and keep on going in that direction. You know, we're not looking for everything all at once. You know, we're not asking for a $5 million increase in fund balance at once, but these steps over time, it's taken a long time to get to where we are, and to keep going, I think is the right path of decreasing that deficit fund balance. We can flip forward. And here's a nice little graph. Right at the bottom, on the bottom left is our budget to actual. And that's good information to see there, where we had a budgeted expenditures of $25.9 million with actual expenditures of $22.3 million. So a decrease really from our final budgeted amounts of about $3.5 million. Typically, we like to see that variance in about a 5% range. And so kind of in that right-hand column, we see that total variance of about 15–16%. That's a pretty large variance, but again, a lot of unknowns in the current year, or I should say in fiscal year 20. So it was expected that there were going to be some variances, but going forward, you know, the hope is that we have a little bit smaller variances, just so that we can tie our budget and actual expenditures a little bit closer to each other. But again, needless to say, at least we have our variances in a positive direction. There's just one line item that has a negative variance to note, but the rest of it is a positive variance, which means we spent less than we expected to spend. Moving forward, we just have we have a few more graphs that is just showing the 19 expenditures compared to the 20 expenditures. And this shows it from a percentage basis, but really what we hit on in the Finance Committee was that our expenses were related to a decrease in instructional expenses of about $2 to $3 million, I believe, which led to that $2.5 million increase in our fund balance. And so this is just kind of showing the allocation of our expenses. Obviously, a large portion of that is to basic programs and added needs. If we kind of just jump to the next graph or so, this will be the revenue side. And again, not much has changed here, except for the fact that we had a pretty decent decrease in state sources. State aid dropped by quite a bit this year, but we had an increase in federal sources. That was in part due to the deferred revenue that was mentioned early on. We had deferred revenue kind of sitting as a liability at the end of last year. And in the current year, we recognized a lot of that federal revenue. So that is due in part to the increase in the federal sources. State sources, really a decrease related to state aid. So that declined. I wouldn't necessarily say they netted out. Revenues was about the same, but I think it dropped a little bit. But again, as we saw in the graph before that, the big change really came on the expenditure side. Moving forward, just some suggestions and recommendations from our standpoint. I think we always like to say a continued support of the business office. We like to see the board active and supporting the business office. You know, I'm not saying, you know, give him everything that he needs, but I think continued involvement and assistance with Scott and the rest of the staff in there is always appreciated. We like to see active boards that take this information to heart and take the finances to heart. We think that's really important in any school district. Some other items to note from the financial statement side, about the fourth paragraph down is something I wanted to note, is really related to the CARES Act funding. So in 2020, the district received about $370,000 in coronavirus relief funds related to the nutrition program. But in 2021, we had $630,000 that came in toward the end of the year that we were going to recognize in what would be the current fiscal year, not fiscal year 20, but fiscal year 21. So as of 6/30/2020, there was $630,000 ready to be recognized in fiscal year 21 related to CARES funding. So I think that's about it. The next page kind of shows some upcoming pronouncements related to audit requirements. Nothing too much to note there. The bigger one would probably be the leases. One to note as well is GASB 84, which is related to student activities funds, which is going to move really outside. If there is a student activities fund, it's going to move outside of that student activities fund and move to its own either special revenue fund, like you would see maybe food service, or you could potentially move it into the general fund, which could potentially increase the general fund balance, or it would create its own fund balance as a special revenue fund. So GASB 84 is going to happen this current year in fiscal year 21. GASB 87 related to leases, that's going to be changed on the financial statement for any type of leases, which is going to recognize both an asset and a liability on the financial statement. So if those happen to exist, those will actually show up on the financial statements, not this next year, but I believe 2 years down the road. So those were just a few of the items I wanted to note. But again, going back to the actual financial statements, when you get some time, I would highly suggest going over the MD&A, which again is really about the first 15 or 20 pages of financial statements. That's really going to show in plain English what is going on in the school district. It's written by the business office. It's written by helped by Scott Johnson. And it has a lot of budgetary highlights and things going on in the district. And it's more plain English than just looking at numbers in financial statements. And so I would suggest taking some time and reading that when you have some time. With that being said, does anybody have any questions on that overview?
Any questions, board members, for Mr. Grunert?
I have no questions.
So, Mr. Grunert, Mike, I do have a question.
Sure.
So what do other districts' variances look like? You know, we saw ours at 15%. You talked about trying to keep it within 5%. So with this crazy year we're having, are we looking like other districts with that variances, or are we, you know, out of spec, so to speak?
I would say that the 15% is definitely higher than normal, but at the same time, I would say other districts are also higher than normal, but I wouldn't say they're at 15%. A lot of them are probably between that 5 and 10% in the current year is what I would say. They're probably closer to that 5 and 10%. But I know that a lot of this stuff can be related to I would normally say ISD related costs, shared transportation costs or something like that. But in your case, probably Barry and RISA costs. It invoices at year end in a timely fashion. And so then you end up kind of book back these expenses, which can throw off budget to actuals. So to kind of curb that, if it's going to throw it off, maybe we budget a little bit higher because we know something's coming in for transportation related costs or shared services costs. And then when it comes in, maybe it's not as much as we expected it to be. So there's a lot of accrued expenditures and items like that that can really affect the budget to actual at year end. That is truly out of the school district's control. But I guess kind of to answer what your original question is, I would say closer to that in the current year, closer to 7%, 5 to 7% is really what we're seeing most districts this year. Some have it really really tight to 1 or 2%, but I would say more often than not it's probably greater than 5%.
Okay, thank you. And last question for me, you know, when we looked at that graph of I believe it was 2016 to 2020, where we talked about the deficit fund balance, and now we're at 1.2. So for everyone that's listening, that's a good thing, I believe, right? When we talk about 1.2 from where we were.
Right. And, there's a couple things to note in there too.
Yep.
So with that, there was a lot of debt, a lot of separate emergency loans that were issued over the years. And so that debt hasn't gone away. In fact, it was essentially reissued. So we paid off old individual debts and kind of created this new debt schedule in the current year. So it still exists. So that debt's there. It's not going to show up on the debt general fund because it is a long-term liability. It's if you look at the notes of the financial statement, there's a debt note in there that kind of shows these liabilities that go to, I want to say 2045 or something like that. So the debt is still there. It's right now. It's managing that debt and making sure we have the money to pay it off. But going back to what you said, anytime, regardless of being at a negative $1.2 million deficit, the fact that 5-6 years ago you were at $12 million deficit, we've come a long way in really a relatively short period of time. And, you know, you're going in the right direction. Not one of those years did we dip back to a decrease, like I should say an increase in a deficit. We didn't increase the deficit. Every year we've decreased the deficit. We're still in the deficit, but we're going in the right direction.
All right, thank you. Any questions from any other board members? All right, Mike, you can send us to your cohort.
All right.
All right. Hello, everybody. And like Mike said, thank you for having us. It's good to see some familiar faces on here and some new ones as well. We appreciate the opportunity to come present to you guys every year. Always happy to deliver good news. So seeing that fund balance go in the right direction is great. So we're seeing things on the upswing and very optimistic looking forward to future years. But I'm going to talk to you about the single audit report. And with Mike, I presented this to the finance committee earlier. We went through it in detail. There are some audit findings that we went through in detail as well. What I'd like to do with you as a group is go through the report. I probably won't go into as much detail on those specifics of the findings, but more so to explain the report, the response from the district, who has agreed with the findings. Actually, I have a call scheduled with Scott for later this week where we're going to talk some ways to approach the corrective action plans and hopefully have next year when I come back a report where I'm not reporting on any audit findings. But this year we do have a few. So I'm opening up to, and you're actually in the full report. So the other PDF, I'm not sure the title, but it would be the single audit report, possibly the federal compliance audit report. I'm not sure the title of the file there. I'll give you a second to get it up. But what this report is a report that's required if you expend $750,000 or more in federal grants. And you as a district expend much more than that. You're upwards of 7 million, or actually over 7 million in federal expenditures. So you're a very large district when it comes to your grants programs. I think I mentioned the findings, and historically there have been some findings in this audit that really in my mind has been more of a reflection of some of the turnover and inconsistencies. When Dr. Townsell presented his recommendation to extend, I think that's great. When we see a stability in a finance office, grants management areas, that sort of thing, it goes a long way, especially in this audit, just because it is such a task to have adequate oversight of grants, because they have lots of requirements. It's really a job within itself for the finance office, just the management of all those grants, and you do have a lot. This is actually our SAS 114 letter. I don't know if you have another file, otherwise I can talk it through. I'm just looking, I'm trying to give whoever's controlling that a second to catch up, but this could be a joint file that has it in there. I guess I'm not sure it is. Okay, so if you scroll towards the end, probably right around there, if you go up a little more, the numbering system changes over. We issue this in a separate cover, but when we submit it to the federal government, it is required to be combined. So you're seeing a combined file here. But that is where I'd like to start on page 1. There are 2 audit letters required. And actually, I think there's one more letter before the one you're on here. The first one is a independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting in compliance with laws and regulations. This report, if you flip to page 2, identifies 2 audit findings. One of them being the deficit budget. That's a requirement that we issue that in a finding each year. So with the progress made over the last handful of years and going back longer than that even, I expect that one in the near future will go away. We have a few related to the federal programs as well, but this report's required because the schedule of expenditures that's included in the report that starts on page 6 of this report, we're compiling information based on your financial records. So we're not actually auditing all of those programs. This is a risk-based compliance audit. So we go through a process of selecting a program each year to audit. It can be relatively predictable at your district, especially when there are prior audit findings, because it is a risk-based audit. So for the past few years, we've audited Title I Part A, and we audit the child nutrition cluster, your nutrition program. So I'm moving the second letter on page 4. That is our auditor's report on compliance with each major program. This is really the gist of our audit procedures. It's a compliance audit. Like I said, we perform tests for the different programs that we audit, this year being Title I Part A and the child nutrition cluster. You can see on the screen there, we have a qualified opinion on Title I that's due to the 3 findings in that area. And we have an unqualified opinion in the child nutrition cluster. The positive take on that is last year's report, they were both qualified opinions. And this year, the child nutrition cluster that was lifted, and we have an unmodified opinion, which, like the financial audit, that is the top opinion you can receive. So with some corrective action, over the next handful of months before the next audit, hopefully we can see 2 unmodified opinions in here next year. And moving to the schedule, just to give a little context to those who have never seen it before, I'm on page 7. But we're required to identify all of your federal grants. So again, we have not audited all of these programs. The very first one listed, we have Title I Part A. That's one of your larger programs. It's presented in a way, it shows you the agencies that the funds flow through. More often than not, a school district is not receiving a direct award from the federal government, but they're receiving it either through an ISD, your RESA, your Department of Education for a lot of it. For some additional reading material, if you wanted to learn more about these programs, that federal CFDA number, that's an identifying number for the program. And the first number references the federal agency that has oversight of that. So in this case, 84, that's your U.S. Department of Education. But there's a document that's released each year. It's called the Compliance Supplement. It's put out by the Office of Management and Budget. It includes detail on all of these different programs. So if you were to simply Google that CFDA number, probably with the Compliance Supplement name with it, you could get to what's essentially an audit guide and a compliance guide for you as a recipient of those grants. So the good thing, and I always like to let our boards know this and our business managers and CFOs, that you basically have a cheat sheet in many ways to the audit, because we have to audit to that compliance supplement. It includes suggested audit procedures, and it can really give someone who's on the other end, on your end, the grants management end of this, a really good idea of what your auditor is going to come in asking for each year. So I try to be as transparent as I can about that. We don't like giving findings as much as you don't like receiving them. So I think I'm hopeful working with Tracy. I think that we'll have another year working with her, that we can help her understand where we're coming from for some of our findings. And I think we're optimistic that we can work through those. But I just wanted to mention that about the CFDA number, because there's a lot of good information for each of these different federal programs. There's not much else to say about the schedule itself, other than you can see on page 10, your total current expenditures of $7 million. Just want to point that out. That is a large amount for a district. I mean, you're a larger district, and there are districts out there as well that have large amounts of funding, similar to yours, but it comes with probably a heavy weight that from the compliance side of things for your business office, it is a lot of work and requires adequate resources. So I just wanted to mention that as well. On page 11 are the notes to the CFA. These are basically template language, the template language that's required to accompany the report. Not much to mention there, but on page 12, note F is a federal income reconciliation. The opinion that we issue on this CFA is in relation to the financial statement opinion. If you were to go back to the letters, you could see that language in there. But this is where we are reconciling between the two. Your federal grant revenue and the financial statements, the audited financials, needs to be reconciled to the expenditures in this report. And obviously there's some differences there that we've explained that are simply due to timing. Mike mentioned the deferred revenue and the title funds. This is where it shows up when you have a mismatch of expenditures on the CFA versus revenue in the financial statements. So that is normal to have, but we are required to include this reconciliation and explain why there are any differences. Then on page 13, I've always said that this should be towards the front because it's a summary really of the entire report. The 2 audit reports I went through, this is where we're checking boxes for the deficiencies that were identified. So each one had findings. That's why the boxes are checked yes for the material weaknesses there. You can see the overall opinion on the major programs that we test. That terminology, major program, you can just think of as the program we actually audit, as opposed to the rest of what's on that schedule that we're not looking at compliance with those programs. So then the following page, I believe that indicates a threshold for the audit. I mentioned the 750,000, and the low risk auditee, to reach that level, you would need to have 2 straight years of no material weaknesses. So at some point in the future, we'll hopefully check the box yes in that area. The impact on the audit has to do with an expenditure coverage that we need. So with $7 million of federal expenditures, if you were a low risk auditee, we would need to reach a 20% coverage. So we would need to pick a program that in itself was, the 1.4 million or more to reach that 20%. But being a high risk, you need a 40% coverage, which is why historically we're auditing 2 programs to reach that threshold, and possibly in some years due to risk, due to prior audit findings in a program. So the benefit of getting that to be a low risk auditee is that possibly in the future, only, the business office will only have to deal with us for 1 audit of their programs as opposed to 2. I mentioned the findings. I felt good about the discussion we had as a group earlier. All of them, only one of them is a new finding this year. We had one other finding that was resolved since last year. So kind of a trade-off 1 for 1 there. And the other ones were repeat conditions from prior years. I believe only one of them relates to the nutrition cluster, and 3 of them relate to the title funds. And this is what you're seeing on the screen. There's required content that we have to include with these audit findings. We identify the criteria, the governing law that is requiring us to report on this condition. We give the district a chance to provide their views. So Scott has helped to some degree with these audit findings for the views of responsible officials, and to provide appropriate context, and sometimes the cause. A cause can be a hard part to pinpoint for these audit findings. But like I mentioned at the beginning, I think over the years, from our perspective, it's been more of a result of some of the turnover within that grants management area in particular. And not just grants management, but I know we worked with Scott years ago. We were making some progress, and then he wasn't with you for a couple of years. And so it's been one of those seesaw type effects, and we're looking forward to working with the same staff, Scott, again next year. And I think we can make some headway on these findings. At the end of the report, the only other thing to mention is the actual corrective action plan that Scott and his group has written. It includes, again, required information that the federal government wants in these corrective action plans. So one of those being, it requires that we identify responsible person. That's something that they've put an emphasis on in the last year or 2, wanting a name for that piece. And other than that, this is pretty similar to the corrective action plan from last year, just based on some of the findings being similar in nature. So does anybody have any questions? I can go into more detail if needed, but happy to answer questions as well.
Any questions from the board? All right, no questions. Thank you so much, Mark.
Not a problem. Appreciate it.
And Mr. Johnson, do we have the manuals from Hungerford in your possession that we can give to the new board members coming on, as well as the 3 remaining?
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you.
The recommended action this evening is that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education votes to accept the 2020 audit report from Hungerford Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Liz, if you can go back to the agenda. Thank you. May I have a motion for the approval of staff report number F1?
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Crowder. Who was the second?
I'll support it.
Supported by Trustee Watson. Any questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote for staff report number F1?
I just had a comment. I want to say it was a very detailed audit, just like it was last year. Like I said, it's a lot of reading, but when you hear good news, that's a good thing. And like I said, very, very detailed audit, and I'm glad to see the progress happening.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else before we call the vote? Secretary Robinson, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Wiley Seeds, Trustee Wiley Seeds, you may be muted. Okay.
Trustee Seeds.
I'm sorry, I unmuted it, but it didn't go, but yes, I'm sorry, I'm here.
Okay. Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson,
Yes.
Staff report number F4 passes. F1, I apologize. Staff report number F2, charter school resolution, second reading, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Reason for board consideration. There's been discussion about the possibility of another entity establishing a new charter school within the boundaries of Benton Harbor Area Schools. Facts analysis: over the past decade and beyond, this school district has lost a substantial number of students and their corresponding state school aid to charter schools within the district boundaries. As the district continues its long journey to deficit recovery, one legislative change that would aid the recovery is a state moratorium on the approval of any charter schools within the district boundaries. The attached resolution requests such a moratorium from the state of Michigan. There is no policy reference, and the recommended action is that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education vote to approve as presented the charter school resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. May I have a motion for the approval of staff report number F2?
So moved.
It sounded like Trustee Denise Seats was first and Vice President Crowder supported.
Yes.
Any questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote for staff report number F3? Secretary Rob?
I'm sorry, I thought that was F2.
It's F3.
No, F3.
Okay. Okay, President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson is yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Wiley Seeds,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
Staff report number F2 passes. Staff report number F3, monthly financial reports.
Reason for board consideration: a set of financial reports is provided to the Board of Education each month. Effects analysis: this evening it's recommended that payments for all of the district's funds be approved for October 2020. Policy reference is 6470, payment of claims. And the recommended action is that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education vote to approve the October 2020 payments for the funds as listed.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. May I have a motion for the approval of staff report number F3?
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Crowder, supported. It sounded like Trustee Watson. Any questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote for staff report number F3? Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
yes,
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Watley Seeds,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
yes,
Okay,
Staff
President Taylor, can I ask a question really quickly?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way that our technical staff can get Ms. Buchanan like instructions on written paper for how to mute and unmute herself so we can ensure she's active in the meetings?
And I will say this, Ms. Robinson, if you look at her name, it looks as if she's hung up the phone, not that she's on mute.
Okay.
So I think technology heard you loud and clear, Secretary Robinson. So if we could provide that, Liz, to Treasurer Buchanan, that ways that we can make sure that she's on the meeting as scheduled. Sometimes I know she needs help and we want to make sure we help her as needed. All right, so I think we approved staff report number F3. We're on to staff report number H1, employment transfers and staff. Mrs. Gale?
Submitting for board consideration to approve the employment of the staff in accordance with the revised school code and other general laws of Michigan. Zaire Kana, teacher in training, first grade at Hall. Charles Billingsley Jr., teacher in training, special education at Hall. Charlene Jones, school secretary at FPE. Regina Robinson, school secretary at Fairplain Middle School. Shawana Bell, school secretary at Hall. Christopher Flagel, accounts payable bookkeeper at central office, and Trevor Shackneys, IT technician at central office. Recommended action that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education vote to approve the employment of the aforementioned staff.
Thank you so much. May I have a motion for the approval of staff report H1?
so moved,
Moved by Trustee Watson.
Support.
Who was first?
doesn't matter. Denise is fine.
Okay, so we have a support from Trustee Watley Seats. Any questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote for staff report number H1? I do have a question, Ms. Gale. I'm seeing secretaries on that staff report. Now, are those secretaries now hired employees within the district?
Yes, they are, sir. We're very happy to announce that we are able, it has always been our intention to bring them back on board. And now we're able to bring them back on, not all of them, unfortunately, but those who have been with the district for 4 or more years. At this time, we're able to bring them on board. We're hoping to bring all of them on board very soon.
All right, good news. Thank you
That's
so much.
awesome.
Any other questions, comments, concerns before we approve staff report number H1? Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes,
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Watley Seeds,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
yes,
Staff report number H1 passes. Staff report number H2, terminations and or resignations.
In this case, it's a retirement, submitting for board consideration to accept the retirement of the following staff: Kathleen McCourt, second grade teacher at Hall, effective November 30th. Recommended action that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education vote to accept the retirement of the aforementioned staff members.
Thank you. May I have a motion for the approval of staff report H2?
so moved.
Moved by Vice President Crowder. May I have a support?
support,
Supported by Trustee Watson. Any questions, comments, or concerns before we call the vote for staff report number H2?
I just have a question. It doesn't impact my vote, but do we already have her position filled, or is that a current opening at this time?
It is a current opening. We do have coverage for that position. However, anytime we do not have a certified teacher in the position, we're required to keep it open.
Any other questions, comments, concerns from the board regarding staff report H2 before we call the vote? Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Wiley Seats,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
Staff report number H2 passes. Staff report T1, special education update, Luana Sheldon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We wanted to present you with an update on the special education compliance before the end of the year and before our board members for their last board meeting. Go ahead, Liz. So as you know, that we have struggled over the years with special ed compliance. We usually get dinged in 3 areas, and actually it's 2 areas that become a third, and that is with a student level corrective action plan. We get a corrective action plan, and then when they go unattended, they become UNCs. So I told you guys about UNCs a few months back, and those are the 3 areas that we look to clean up. So one thing that we have done in the past year is we reconfigured the office. It took a little bit, but we really modeled it after other successful structures. We went from having supervisors to having a director and an assistant director. We also implemented 2 instructional facilitators / IEP coaches, which are elementary focused or secondary focused. We additionally hired a department manager so we could manage the multiple IEPs in different special ed meetings that have different names to them, and a clerk to manage all of the incoming phone calls, complaints, you name it. Go ahead, Liz. So there is the org chart for the special ed office. As you see, we divided it up into the services. I'm sorry, I forgot one. We do have Rita CA. Currently, we have Rita CA, who is our FAPE provider, another piece that we were getting called on for compliance. And what that simply means is that when students lose their instructional time, it is our responsibility to find the time to sit and teach them and catch them up and give them their hours. Rita CA has been the person that we have hired to do that, and she's done a great job at it. So we provide the services, we provide training, which you see the IEP coaches are, and then we provide the support. Thank you. So aside from the restructuring, we also implemented a number of processes and protocols. So a lot of writing, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of meeting and pulling different groups together to develop these different processes and protocols. The special ed handbook, this year, if you remember earlier, I believe you guys approved the revisions. We wrote it last year. The code of conduct, which now is very much aligned with some of the needs that we have to fulfill in special ed. IEP meeting schedules, which, believe it or not, it's an absolutely huge deal. Our department manager probably spends close to 80% of her time doing just that, arranging for these meetings, making sure all of the right players are at the table. Otherwise, it could be a compliance issue. Special ed does a weekly staff meeting where they come together and they discuss all of these pieces. And monthly special ed state check-ins because of our state oversight. in the past. And our registration process, we also aligned to ensure that we don't miss students that are coming in with IEPs and or suspected of needing an IEP. Our professional development is pretty extensive. We began last year by dedicating anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes per principal's meeting to train principals in special education, so they had a full understanding of the programs in their buildings. Each of our district provided professional development days, which we have 5 a year, we dedicate several sessions to special education, both for the special education teacher, for administrators, and for the general education teachers. And right now, the Office of Special Ed offers virtual training weekly for the special ed teachers. So where we were leading the county in disproportionate discipline for special ed students. In 2016, unfortunately, we were the first district in the state to reach a quadruple UNC, meaning we had one of those corrective action plans. It wasn't corrected the next year. It wasn't corrected the next year. It wasn't corrected the next year. And so it became a quadruple UNC. There are other districts that have gotten a quadruple UNC, but we were the first. And we also fell under state intervention in 2016 as well. So this one's for our outgoing board members. We have 0 UNCs. We are free and clear. We are at 95% compliance. We have a couple of school level, student level corrective action plans, and they literally are minor. And we actually plan on having them corrected this month before the end of the semester. So that's it. That it was just a quick update, but I just wanted to give that good news. And of course, special thank you to the special ed office for all the work they've done.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions concerning the presentation for special education?
I have a couple, but they'll be super quick.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, so she mentioned that we changed our registration process. I'm just wondering, how did we change that to improve?
So what we did is we made sure that we had a protocol within the registration process of just a double check. So if I said to you, Ms. Robinson, was your child in special ed, the district you're coming from? Maybe the parent says, yeah, maybe the parent says no. If they say, yeah, do you have a copy of the IEP? No, I don't. So we have like this little check off of, they said, yeah, they don't have the IEP. We make sure that we contact the district and we get it done all within literally hours. If you are a Michigan resident, there's a database that we can go to. So you may have said, no, my kid hasn't, but we have a database that we can go to just to double check. You may have said, I'm not sure. Some people don't realize that speech, for example, is special ed services. So we just put a better checks and balances in the registration packet.
Okay, the second question I have is regarding the training that they're doing or that's offered, which I think is awesome. Is that offered or required?
So that's interesting that you say that. It's a little bit of both. The weekly training that they're doing is required. Anytime we offer or anytime that we mandate something during regular school hours, then it's a mandate. During our DPPD days, those are also required under the guise of if you select one, because we try to offer 2 or 3 topics per session. So they're required to participate in DPPD. They may or may not select a special ed topic, but we try to offer a lot of special ed topics.
Okay. And then the last question is it's a statement and a question. I think it's awesome that we're at 95% compliance. The other 5%, you said you think that you'll be able to get that rectified this month. So do you anticipate by next board meeting or no? Okay.
I would say, I would hope for February. That's just our hope. Okay. I mean, that, like I said, they're minor. It involves a lot of paperwork, and it depends on how fast the state turns over the paperwork and look at it, et cetera, et cetera. But that is the goal, is to be completely complaint-free. We won't always stay complaint-free, most people don't in special ed. I mean, there's always something that that gets you from a different angle. But what we are dedicated to is nothing ever going into the UNC category. That's just neglect. In the end, it's just neglect, that you just don't address what the problem is and you allow it to fester and perpetuate.
Okay, thank you. No more questions for me.
Any other board members? Do you have any questions concerning the special education update?
No, no question, just a comment. Good work to you and your team for, getting everything back up to date and into compliance. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to send a special shout out because in my 10 years on this board, we've been out of compliance.
Yep.
So to be sitting at 95% is really awesome, because the state, they've been riding our coattails because of this neglect. And, this district is about what's in the best interest of our students. And by us being at 95% compliance and almost 100, then we'll prove that without a shadow of a doubt. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I just want to add, I know when I came on board, when I seen that we had UNCs, the uncorrected non-compliance, that was the first time I've heard of UNCs, and I've dealt with special education for a long time, and we always had corrective action plans, but it never got to a point where they were non-compliant. So I just want to shout out our special education department, because we put a lot of pressure to get that off of us, to kind of reset and start and have a fresh, we get a lot of praise from Barry and Risa in the Department of Education with where we are now, especially with regards to special education, because we were in a bad state. That is not the case anymore. So a huge shout out.
All right, thank you. And I call that as staff report number 1. It was just basically an update. So now staff report number 1, River of Life.
Thank you. Reason for board consideration: to authorize the memorandum of agreement between Benton Harbor Area Schools and the River of Life Christian School, and to allow the disbursement of SRF funds to cover the cost of services incurred in the assistance of supporting low achieving students with the district's geographical boundaries. Facts and analysis. The CARES Act authorized the Educational Stabilization Fund, ESSF, to provide funding to local educational agencies through the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Fund, ESSERF, which requires that equitable services be provided to students and teachers in non-public schools. Policy reference is 6325. Recommended action that the Benton Harbor Area School Board of Education authorize and formalize the memorandum of agreement between the Benton Harbor Area Schools and the River of Life Christian School.
Thank you. May I have a motion for the approval of staff report number T1? I need a motion from the board.
So move.
Moved by trustee Bradley. Do I have a support?
Support.
Supported by Vice President Crowder. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding staff report T1 before we call the vote? So I would ask a question, and the question is so you can explain to everyone online as to why we have to give River of Life any of our fundings, and they're not a part of our district. I know why, but I think a lot of our guests online and maybe some new board members or even current board members may not know.
Sure. So equitable services is a mandate when we're using federal funds. It really is a formula-based. It's formula-based and it follows the students. So these are Benton Harbor area region school. I don't even know how to explain it in that sense. They're within our school district boundaries that are low socioeconomic, but they happen to go to private schools.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from board members regarding staff report number T1? All right, Secretary Robinson, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Watley Seats,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
Staff report T1 passes. Staff report T2, personal curriculum guide.
Thank you. Reasons for board, excuse me, board consideration. The goal of this manual is to create guidelines and transparency in the personal curriculum process. This manual is examined annually to reflect the best practices and most recent federal and state guidelines. Facts and analysis. Benton Harbor Area Schools has developed this manual to help facilitate the creation of personal curriculum for students. The content of this manual are guided by information from Michigan Department of Education, policy reference 5110 student handbooks and 2260 non-discrimination and access to equal education opportunities. Recommended action that the Benton Harbor Area School Board of Education votes to approve the revised, can I correct that? Votes to approve the personal curriculum guide. This is the first edition of it.
All right, thank you. So at this time, we need a motion for the approval of staff report T2.
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Crowder. Can I have a support?
Support.
Supported by Trustee Watley Seats. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding staff report T2 before we call the vote? So I have a question, ma'am. How does this personal curriculum work? Is it to help our parents to define a personalized curriculum for their students?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely could be. Good question. I'm glad you asked. It is a provision that is completely underutilized in the state, to be perfectly honest. When we talk about individualized instruction, this really speaks to that. So for example, I'll pick on Michelle Crowder. If Michelle Crowder decided that she really wanted to go into hospitality, catering, etc., we would be able to write her curriculum and look at the Michigan Merit curriculum and say, well, she doesn't need to have the 2 years of algebra. We can supplement it with something else. I mean, that in this particular case, it makes more sense that she gets something else. So what it does is it allows you to look at the Michigan Merit curriculum. There are some exceptions, like there's some things you have to have, but basically you look at the Michigan Merit curriculum for graduation and you say, yeah, that doesn't make sense for this kid to be so top heavy in science and math when a lot of what they're doing is not math focused.
All right, so it's kind of like when a person attends college and they get a course catalog, right? It gives, you're creating a guidance to graduate and to matriculate to whatever field that person, i.e. wants to go into.
Yeah, actually, it's exactly like a course catalog. If you're in the College of Arts and Letters versus in the College of Science, et cetera, that there are requirements under each of those, correct?
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Yes, I have one question.
Go
And what grade level would that be, Dr. Shelton?
So that is really for your secondary, because it speaks to Michigan Merit curriculum and
Predominantly high school.
It's all about graduation.
But it starts at 9th grade then?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
But in my experiences as an assistant superintendent and principal, it's really taken advantage of around the junior, senior year, because you received all your core credits during the during your 9th and 10th grade year. And once you have those credits, you should have the opportunity to select what keeps your interest in school.
That sounds great. That might keep more students here and less of a problem with students graduating and dropping out.
It does.
Mhm.
Any other questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote for staff report T2? Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Watley Seats,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
Staff report T2 passes. Staff report T3, the extended learning plan update.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. You can go. You can go. One more. So I just wanted to show that we did enter the national norms. Again, just to be clear, there are no state norms around NWEA. It's not a state exam. There are national norms. They just released these national norms for the 2020 year. The last norms that we used were from 2015, I believe. And you can just see the difference there. Again, that's based off the 50th percentile. We do look at our students, how they have grown, different circumstances, and that's why we decided to go with our own status norms. And our status norms are what we call our goals. So you can see that they're not much off of everything else. But again, it's the whole purpose of what this exam is about. It is about growth. Where are they and where do we need to take them? In what kind of increments? Go ahead. And go ahead. And one more time. So none of that information has changed. You know, we come into February that we'll have our new information. Now we're at our interaction rates. So I always gray out what we've already talked about. And so for our interaction rates, whether it be the two-way interaction or the attendance, because both count, we're looking much better, but overall, we knew that there are two variables here that actually lowered us overall. And one was the last time that we met, literally the day before our last board meeting, Power School put in a new report, which was able to pull the information much more accurate. So before we were doing all the calculations ourselves, now it's much more accurate of what needs to be reported. We knew the percentages were going to go down, and I'm going to tell you why. Before the report that they gave us, we just kind of took everything, we added it all up, and we divided it and got a percentage. This report actually eliminates. So for example, if I entered 4 interactions for Deshauna Robinson and 1 for Matthew Bradley, before we took that, added them together and averaged it. Now this report doesn't care about the 2 extra ones for Deshauna. They just say she met it or didn't meet it. And I can't give one of hers to Matthew for an average. It just says he doesn't meet it. So we knew that it was going to be a little bit more stringent because it's much more accurate. Also, we had Thanksgiving. So with Thanksgiving, there's actually several things going on here. With Thanksgiving, our percentages dropped a little bit. Each of these schools have their own stories, and our elementary schools really got hit hard with the adults at the schools either being COVID positive or close contact and had to be quarantined. So we struggled. Some of our schools, we actually went virtual before we all went virtual. And so there's a reflection of it. Next one. Thank you. So at this time, we did change. We told you before that we did officially change right after the break. We went 100% virtual, which is synchronous and asynchronous, meaning that the kids have a time that they log on, they're in classroom with their teacher online, etc. Our plan is to get through winter break and to see, one, what the state says, and two, what the county says. Right now, they are really expecting a surge from Thanksgiving, and they're expecting another surge from Christmas. So just to kind of preview it, more than likely, we may recommend that we go to the semester 100% virtual, come back face to face, which would be like the third week in January, K-8. I also want to say that hopefully, with the vaccine, with just a whole new plan out there, hopefully things will start to taper off. Our plan is to try to be 100% in some kind of modified fashion, 100% face-to-face by the fourth quarter. We're going to be proposing all of this to Dr. Townsell with a good plan to at least try to get our high school kids back on this campus and get them engaged again. And with a little luck, get a chance to do some activities if it can be done safely. Next, I think that's it. That might be it. That's the same. Thank you. No, I just need the staff report. Thank you. All right. Reasons for consideration. On August 20th, 2020, Governor Whitmer signed House Bill 5913 into law as Public Act 149, Section 98A, states that in order to receive state aid for the 2020-2021, districts must provide for instruction under an extended COVID learning plan that has been approved by an intermediate district or authorizing body. The plan must be reconfirmed each month at the monthly meeting of the school board. Facts and analysis. In policy 0122, board powers, the board has the responsibility to the performance of any function related to the operation of the district in the interests of public elementary and secondary education in the district, including educating students, providing for the safety and welfare of students while at school or at school-sponsored activities or while en route to school or from school or school-sponsored activity. Policy reference, Michigan Public Act 149, Section 98A. Recommended action that Benton Harbor Area School Board of Education reconfirm that has to be corrected, that there is a modification in the instructional delivery of the COVID-19 learning plan. And again, that modification is that we are 100% from November 30th until January 4th.
Thank you. Does everything look okay, Dr. Sheldon? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so may I have a motion for the approval of staff report T-3?
So moved.
Moved by by Vice President Crowder, supported by Trustee Watson. Any questions, comments, concerns before we call the vote?
Just have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to ask Dr. Shelton, just from your point of view as a district and as our chief, what could we be doing better to increase attendance for our students?
Well, I'll be very honest. I think we're doing really well. We have to remember that historically we've had attendance issues. So COVID has not helped the situation. So considering that we are in the middle of COVID and our attendance actually looks like it does, I think we're doing really well. Our schools are working overtime, reaching out. They've doubled down, like each teacher has like a partner, as in someone that's a non-teacher that helps to reach out to kids. They do wellness checks. So I think we're doing really well. I can absolutely put together some articles that are going on, but they're across the United States. Everybody is struggling. It's just a lot of virtual fatigue. They keep talking about like the lost kids, really like people just don't know where the kids are. They're not logging in. The parents are not engaged, and not engaged maybe for simple reasons of being confused. But overall, I honestly think that, that we're doing all that we can considering the circumstance.
Okay, and I know that we have various MDE bulletins and things that we can look at for data to see attendance, not only for the state, but for our area. So would we maybe potentially in our next meeting be able to get some information about how we compare to districts around us as far as attendance is concerned?
Let me see what I can find.
Okay, because I don't doubt that nationally and in the state, everyone is having issues. And we've said that in conversation a couple of times, but it just would be nice for us to see if this is a common theme with other districts in our area, so we can kind of see how we're doing comparatively.
Hey, I would like to add, in our area, Benton Harbor Area Schools is a part of the Middle Cities Education Association, and that in MCA those are districts with the similar different demographics of Benton Harbor Area Schools. So for example, Flint Community Schools, Saginaw, who have the same demographics that we can also compare as well.
Oh, great.
Any other questions, comments, concerns regarding staff report T3 before we call the vote? Secretary Robinson, please call the vote.
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Treasurer Buchanan, Trustee Wiley Seats,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
Staff report number T3 passes. Dr. Sheldon, is that everything from you?
You have to allow public comment.
Correct. I was just making sure you were finished.
I'm good.
Yes, ma'am. Are there any members from the public that have a comment on the extended learning plan? We won't answer questions. You can leave your questions, but you can make comments as well. Anyone for public comment on the extended learning plan? All right. Now we have old business. Is there any old business from the Board of Education? Any new business? So I do have one matter to announce. Last night, we evaluated the superintendent, and I'm going to state his ratings as I did last night. There are 3 ratings that make up a summative score. The first rating was from the professional development rating. It was a rating of 3.73 or 93%. For student growth, the score from the board was 3. For district-wide goals, the score was 3.08. And the summative score of all 3 items combined was a score of 3.37, which is 84%. So the superintendent of Benton Harbor Area Schools has a score of 3.37, which is an effective score. All right, so at this time we have open public comment. Anyone from the public, you have 3 minutes to make a comment. Anyone for public comment? All right, superintendent announcements and or comments.
Yes, I do have a couple of announcements. First, I would like to say to the outgoing school board members, I appreciate your support with regards to selecting me to lead Benton Harbor area schools. It's definitely an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to serve this community. I also want to thank you for granting me a one-year extension on my contract as well. I do appreciate that. I do believe that we will get better over time. I'm excited to work with our new incoming board members, and we're going to do our best to revolutionize and revitalize the educational experience for students of Benton Harbor. Additionally, we do have a small token of appreciation for our outgoing board members for your service here in Benton Harbor area schools. And we'd like to create a culture of board members that come and go under this administration to appreciate you on your way out. So that's what I like to do under my leadership. Next, I'd like to say thank you to Miss Mercedes and her team at the Staylock Storage Facility in St. Joe for their donation of several winter coats and other winter accessories for students in our district. And the last acknowledgement I have, we just got this information today. A huge congratulations to Benton Harbor area schools. We were informed that Benton Harbor area school has been awarded a grant for $22,938 for the additional instructional time and interventions grant. That funding is for additional instructional time and intervention that has been authorized by Section 35A-5 of the State School Aid Act, Public Act 165 of 2020. That grant has been awarded to assist districts with the cost of additional instructional time to those pupils in grades kindergarten through third for the 2020-2021 academic year only. So a huge congratulations for us to receive the additional instructional time and interventions grant. Our team does do a great job going out, researching opportunities to continue to support our students in the district and have no cost in our general fund. So thank you so much. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Comments from the board. We're going to start tonight with Mr. Bradley. You have the floor, sir.
Good evening, everyone. First, would like to give out holiday greetings. So I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year if I don't get a chance to say that. Want to thank the superintendent, his cabinet, teachers, support staff, and certainly last but not least, our students. This year has had its ups and downs, but nonetheless, we resisted. This is the last board meeting of the year, and we will see new faces. I would first like to welcome our new members. Remember, if you have any questions, concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me or any other members, current or past members, because they have a lot of knowledge of what's going on. You may have an issue, you may have a question or something. I would like to thank our outgoing members, Mrs. Crowder, Mrs. Seats, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Watson. Each of them brought, a different perspective to the board. Mrs. Crowder being a former teacher in the district, Mrs. Seat being a parent, grandparent, alumni of the district, Mr. Taylor being an alumni, and also being on the board and serving for a long time. And I mean, if you brought up something to him, an issue or a concern, trust me, if you better have some extra time on your hand, because he was going to talk your ear off for about an hour or two on that same issue, and you're trying to segue out the conversation, and he would keep on going. But he had a lot of knowledge. Sometimes he would ruffle feathers, but when you come back, he'll say, "Hey, I'm just trying to get you to understand this." So, like I said, a lot of knowledge there. Very supportive of us getting training, helping us to communicate with the superintendent, helping us see different angles of a problem or issue. Mr. Watson with the municipal things. And, you know, coming from a municipal background, he will help you understand the numbers. If you had a question about it, he'll sit back and say, well, look at this, take a look and see how this will do. So I want to thank you working with everybody. Let me see what else I got here. I had to write it out so I wouldn't miss nothing. Once again, I look forward to tackling issues that we face in our community and in public education with our new members, and look forward to continue to work with our superintendent and remaining board members as we move and look forward. So, like I said, you know, it's a sentimental meeting because, like I said, y'all are going to be missed, and we've had our good times, our bad times, and we wasn't expecting the pandemic. You know, was going in 2020, new superintendent and all that, and COVID. You know, so but with all that, I'm going to end my comments there, and thank you. You all have a good evening.
Man, thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Mr. Watson.
Yeah.
Thank you, President Taylor. First thing I would like to wish everybody a happy holidays. Christmas and New Year's is coming up, and like I said, I'd like to wish everyone happy holidays. This is my last board meeting, and there's a lot of things that have gone through my head as I approach this. The one thing I want to say is this. I've served in public administration for 20 plus years. Public service is a little bit different animal. Public service is an animal that you have to be ready to, you make a lot of sacrifices. But when it's for a greater good, those sacrifices are minimal. I've lost a lot over the last couple of years, but one of the most gratifying things has been serving on this board and working with a great group of people collectively to bring this district, to keep momentum and moving this district forward. I've heard a lot be said, you know, especially during the time of campaign and leading up, that, you know, curriculum is the main thing. As we saw tonight, the finances of this district are paramount to making sure that this district can provide a quality education for all students in this community. Like I said, I appreciate every one of my colleagues, board members, and if you have any, if you need me, you can call me. I'm available. I don't plan on going anywhere too soon, but you never know what may happen. Again, it's been a pleasure serving on this board, and Dr. Townsend and his staff, kudos to you and the work that you've done, even in the midst of a global pandemic, to make sure that the district continues to move forward and that you accommodate all the fluctuations and things that the state has done. President Taylor, appreciate your leadership on this board. And like I said, we'll be in contact even after this is over with. Like I said, the ones that are staying, keep pushing forward. The most important thing at its core is the education of our students. It's not about personality. It's not about popularity. It's about this community and making sure that our students get a quality education and we equip them to compete in a global world and a global market. Again, thank you for letting me serve. And like I said, happy holidays to everyone.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So at this time, we'll go to Trustee Watley Seats.
Thank you, President Taylor. Well, good evening, everyone. And yes, happy holidays and have a safe and happy holidays. That's what I wish for everyone. You know, when I was presented with this opportunity about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
It's 7:30.
Sorry. Yes, it was challenging to me. I will say that, you know, Mr. Mitchell, who was my board president at that time, was very instrumental in helping me gain a lot of knowledge in terms of what goes on in a board. And I do appreciate that. public service, this is public service. I haven't been in public service a long time, but I am a salesperson. I have dealt with customer service. So kind of along the same lines there. You know, we're dealing with customers, we're dealing with shareholders, and we're trying to make everyone happy and create a universal and just a cohesive environment. And I'm seeing that has been done, and I'm very happy with the results that I've seen. Dr. Townsend, you're awesome. You're great. You bring out so much, you know, for our community and for our youth as well. You're very instrumental with them. You're just, very helpful in that arena. And I've met some other wonderful people along the way. And I just want to say that I'm very thankful for the opportunity. I do have a grandson that is in this district, and he will remain in this district. And I will continue to be a part of this district and even beyond him. So with that being said, for the new people coming in, this is about our students. This is about their futures. Yes, and that's really pretty much all I want to say about that. And I know you all, I'm excited, you know, to see what the changes. Change is hard sometimes, but I'm very excited to see the change and look forward, you know, to just continuing to be a part of it. And I appreciate everything that everybody's done. All board members, you know, that are still with us, continue to do what you're supposed to do, continue to do the good work. Incoming ones, hey, rally in and be a part of it. Be cohesive, you know, be nice, you know, this is love, peace, and happiness, you know, and that's what we have to have in this day and time. It's very hard. It's a very difficult time right now for a lot of people. And, you know, we don't always understand why we're going through this, but there is a reason behind it. And that being said, thank you, everyone. And hey, enjoy.
Appreciate you, Denise. I'm going to say thank you, sister, for that one. You know, I'm gonna go a little bit off key tonight, but that's all right. And so, Secretary Robinson.
So I just want to begin by thanking you all for voting me in as trustee and promoting me to secretary unanimously. I really value you all trusting my judgment and seeing my strengths within my interview. I want to thank you for trusting those strengths in our meetings and also teaching me in areas where you saw weakness is greatly appreciated. And I have grown tremendously since being on this board. I just want to make sure that Vice President Crowder and Trustee Watley Seats know that I appreciate every look of love and concern that I see in your eyes during our meetings. And I promise that I will continue to make each of you proud. I'm thankful for Trustee Watson with your leadership with facilities and finance and just politics in general. We've had a lot of good conversations. And President Taylor, you know, we have gone tooth and nail in some conversations behind the scenes that people don't know, but I value those conversations. They've been real, they've been genuine, and I've learned significantly. So I apologize for any moments that I was stubborn, but I appreciate your patience in working with me and ensuring that I understood board leadership and how things are ran as far as leadership for the district. So I just want to ensure that each of you know that I value you significantly and I will miss you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue to work with Mr. Bradley and with Trustee Bradley and Treasurer Buchanan, as well as our new board members that are coming in. I'm really excited about the upcoming year. And I know that we are going to accomplish greatness. So I just want to let our community know that we are just getting started. And I hope you all are as excited about the next year of board leadership as we are. Thank you.
And we thank you, sister. I'm gonna miss you. Thank you so much, but I got your phone number, so I'll bug you and your husband too, so. All right, Vice President Crowder.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. It's almost bedtime. Fabulous news on the no aunts. Shout out to the special ed department and their team. Fantastic work being done by Elizabeth Gale and her team, as well as Scott Johnson and his staff. And of course, our superintendent and his leadership team. I've never had so many congratulatory statements in one meeting, but all of these team leaders are fantastic now. And they've only grown with our new superintendent. So that just goes to show that we have picked the right superintendent. That was a very good concentric update by, I think that was by the superintendent. No, yeah, that was the superintendent. And the report, an updated COVID-19 report with Dr. Shelton. I do love the way that the concentric people are visiting homes. I think that's a great idea, and that will keep our students and our parents on their toes as long as they keep visiting. Because when you know somebody's coming by, you're going to be ready. I've been honored to serve for 17 months on this board, and I'll miss all of you after tonight, but still I'm available. You can call it or contact me anytime. I wish all present and future board members well, and I know they will continue to move forward in this great district. Thank you.
I want to say thank you, Sister Vice President Crowder. Appreciate you, appreciate your leadership. Great job this year.
Thank you.
And for me, I'm going to be brief because sometimes, you know, I get long-winded, but
No.
yeah.
Joe Taylor, no.
Well, you know, if I keep talking, I'm going to start crying. So I know that I better shut it up and kind of go a little fast. But I just want to thank the community. You know, when I came on the board, I did different segments. You know, I was voted in once, I think, for like 2 years. Then I got voted in for 4. Then I got appointed, things like that happen. And so sometimes, you know, you take the appointments. I didn't want to take an appointment at the loss of an individual, but I had to step in and take the seat being next in charge. I didn't want to take the other appointment. We had a board president, and when she resigned, I took that appointment. We were going through a lot of trials and tribulations the last several years. I've seen all the contracts from the state. You know, we've been under those, we fought through them. And I'm really I'm proud of all those boards because, you know, we had some good, the bad, and the ugly. But we did the right thing, and that was standing up for our students to keep our community school open. But I'm actually even prouder of this board because we faced a major milestone in getting our autonomy back, right? So in June, we got our autonomy back. We made some great decisions. The school is still open. We started working with Treasury. We did a memo of understanding with the CEC committee. We've got great momentum going forward to create a great and vital district that I know will be around. We just have to keep our foot on the pedal. And I would say to our new board members, congratulations and welcome. Whatever you need from me, I'm here to answer any questions, comments, concerns you may have. Call me up. I'm going to give you my phone number through email. And don't be concerned about bugging me because I definitely want to help. I'm not gone from the district. I'll still be helping out with FIRST Robotics at the high school and Robotics Elementary, as well as our 7th and 8th grade. And that's such a wonderful program. You know, been working with that for the last 14, almost 15 years. So we're the second oldest robotics program out of Berrien, Cass, or Van Buren County. So that's really phenomenal to be a district like ours, but yet at the same time, we still try to reach the same goals and outcomes as other districts. To this board, like I say, you guys, I think this has been really the best board for me because, you know, as Mr. Bradley stated, we bumped heads sometimes, and I'm gonna always try to come at you guys because I want us to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I want to make sure that we're learning, right? It's not about teaching, but it's about learning to make sure that we're doing the right things to help our students and help our community stakeholders. So thank you for bearing with me. It all worked out in the end. You guys are great. I'm gonna miss you so much. I love each and every one of you. You got my phone number, call me, harass me. As I stated tonight, we're sisters, we're brothers. And so whatever you need from me, I'm here for you. And with that being said, superintendent, staff, teachers, thank you guys for bearing with us. Thank you for allowing all of us to serve. And thank you, superintendent and your staff, for bringing great expectations to our students, for corrective actions for our teachers, right? By helping with bringing back 10% of pay, as well as step increases. Great job. You came here, and we don't hear too much from our teachers, because I think right now we're pretty stable. And to let everyone on the phone listening know that I think we only have 6 openings. So last year this time, Ben Harbor Area School had over 50 openings. So it's a phenomenal job. And just thank you guys. And superintendent, we know that you're gonna lead this district in the right direction, you and your team. Continue. And I love that you're a young person, because our demographics in this area are 30s on down. So you can relate to our young students and our young families. Appreciate you guys. With that being said, I'm gonna stop before I cry. May I have a motion to close tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Moved by, of course, Mr. Watson.
Support, support.
Okay. Supported by Denise Watley Seats. Madam Secretary, would you call the final vote? Or adjournment?
President Taylor,
Yes.
Vice President Crowder,
Yes.
Secretary Robinson votes yes. Trustee Watley Seat,
Yes.
Trustee Bradley,
Yes.
Trustee Watson.
Yes.
All right, so this is our final meeting. We're going to adjourn it at 7:42 p.m. Unless there is something that comes up that's an emergency, we're all done for the year. All right.
And when should we pick up our appreciation gifts, Dr. Townsend? Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Sorry. Ms. Goodwin will arrange a schedule for you to retrieve, or either we drop off.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
All right, y'all have a good one.
All
Talk
right.
to y'all later.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So this meeting is adjourned at 7:42. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.